Hello everyone, welcome to On Point, the PvP Pro League show for Guild Wars 2, of course, covering the EU and the NA region for the past week, and the next 6 weeks that are going on, obviously, as well as the finals, which is the culmination of EU and NA versus each other and themselves, I suppose, and then the seasons beyond and the World Championships as well. If you don't know what we're talking about, or what we will be talking about, the Guild Wars 2 Pro League is here. It's here, Helix. It's here.
It is, man. It is, for sure. And I'm excited about it. It's been exciting so far. I mean, week one was already great. I think like EU kind of went as expected. And then NA actually had a couple of really fun matches, and honestly, in some ways, kind of upsets. But yeah, it's pretty exciting, man.
Awesome. We're going to be able to see exactly what Helix is talking about in a bit, as obviously we have some footage from those games. But we did, of course, have the final teams coming through from last week. Last week we had the qualifiers for EU and NA. And yeah, it went pretty well. I feel like the teams that were meant to go through went through from EU. Do you feel the same about North America as well?
I think at the end of the day, yeah, the teams that were kind of expected or kind of, I mean, once they showed up on that day, I think those teams that were going to make it through did make it through. The only kind of point of contention would be Apex Prime versus PZ, and I mean, they fought it out just as kind of people thought they would. It was really extreme. I mean, it was really close. It came down to a game 3 that was extremely close, and the first match actually on Forest was seconds away from being anyone's game. I mean, it was really good. But other than that, yeah, the 3 other matches were probably kind of as anticipated.
Okay. Well, we are going to be able to go into those highlights for you now, and we're just going to show you exactly what happened last week. No, just some footage, really. Depends what you think about highlights. But anyway, you're going to see some nice footage here of what happened this past week, and then we're going to give you some info, final results, and, you know, we'll talk about what's going on next week on the Pro League. So, stay tuned for these highlights. Still trying to move on to Posey as well as he goes up towards the top, comes back down as well to try and get some support from Blackjack, but he gets run over. Literally, you see people piling over his corpse. Triffin comes in for the extra damage as well. I think that's going to be it, as you see that Heart of Thorns Deer finisher coming out, and they're looking for the upkeep on the kills. Super goes down next. They're really rolling over this. Damage is coming in to Xeonix right now. He tries to get his elite off, but he gets interrupted and he's going to be brought to the ground. That's a lot of damage. Guns and Tools tries to go in for the res here, but he's going to be dropped into a list. There's just too many conditions, and he's going to be dropped. And they're cleaning up mid for the possible free cap now. That is a massive end play for TCG. 0 points coming out for these guys at the moment. We're going to see Rom kind of almost drop very low, but he drops into that Celestial Avatar form, which gives him a lot of healing, but does get locked down as well. And he needs to be careful as he disengages, because he's actually not able to get a lot of those heals off. He does get interrupted as well, tries to get away with the staff, trying to use the mobility, gets interrupted again, and look at the damage that comes out onto him as well. He goes into the downstate here. We need to see the res coming out from Frosty, and we're going to see that Prototype is in the downstate. We're going to see the rally, and Rom does rally and get back up, and that's a big mid fight already, with 2 members of the blue team coming out, and also Ferror in the downstate, just as you thought. This is classic orange logo. The Ranger's coming in now as well. He's trying to line of sight, distract. Oh no. Is he going to come in for a cheek? He's going for it. This is really ballsy from Lipion. Knockback comes out with a big old bomb. He's going to get the res. Oh, the power plays from Lipion, as he does a great job there. Epic stuff. They feel like they could get the team kill here, and they're already going for Demon Lord, but we are going to see the stun coming out on the side onto Oracle from Minzy there. That's a really good job offering him with the slick shoes, and they do get a kill here. This is a really good job, and aka Lipion not able to be the hero this time, and I feel like they've been overcommitted here, and they will get a couple of kills potentially, but they back up. Levin in really low state here as well, and they come back out of their situation and get Demon Lord down, and that's top tier play for you. 2 down states, and they get the kill on Demon Lord. And that's epic play from 55 ranked Dragons.
A little bit of a rocky start here for Final Form, but this is exactly how they feel comfortable playing. You basically just sit that Druid there forever. He can sustain that 1v2 for essentially, I mean, forever, and then you just wait for the Chronos to come in, and you can, if at any point they try to out-rotate, you just portal back, but still, they managed to get that kill there. Zora now in the downstate, they're going to lose him.
There's the portal from Sub Cutie, and Jerome is falling through it.
And they're going to try to take the rest of the team out, and this one Swoop here, and Ulrun now getting down as well as Cade comes in with the vault. Happy Kid coming in with a bunch of DPS as well.
Taken down as, oh man, that is just brutal for Never Lucky. They managed to get the decap to the mine. Very surprised that Theonix actually didn't get the full cap there, knowing that one of his members was at least down. They're probably going to lose the fight. Katsumi trained out of there. 4 people off the map here on the side of this blue team. They will end up losing that henge point, and now Theonix is not even going to get the cap at the mine point.
And chase him off later. Ostrich now going to try to cut him off, although he's not healthy either, as he got Bowen just now sitting at about 20% HP. K-Bud now getting countered, and he's going to go down right there. Zeus going to go for the res. Do they have the damage to maintain as they knock it back there?
Isn't it enough as Marvin's now going in for it as well? I don't think so. Is Marvin? Oh, they're able to take down Zeus as well. Marvin needs to be very careful. He has nothing left. He's going to be taking down a 3-man life, though Java is off of respawn, trying to hold on to this mine point. We see Morph already making way to it. He has both of his traps ready. We'll have to see if he's able to sustain. Trackful coming in as well. So is Tarsus. This is going to be it. Whoever takes this will be claiming game number 1. Red team gets the cap on the head. They got to get this kill now, though. Who's going to get it? Oh,
they get it! Apex gets it!
Gets the kill onto Chieftain and claims game number 1.
NA and the EU highlights all in one go there, and good stuff. I mean, that was so hype at the end of that highlight reel, that Lord's, that kind of boss rush on the side. That was brilliant stuff.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think K-Pud for sure is kind of feeling like he could have won that one. And honestly, if they took that map, they probably had it. I mean, they would have been able to take the next one and been able to keep going. But yeah, they dropped that one, unfortunately, with just like seconds. I mean, it's literally like one difference in a play, like one skill use a little bit differently could have allowed them to win that one, and they would have been sitting now tied for first place at 2-0, but now they're going to be sitting in 5th at 1 and 2. So
blimey. There was some really good action on in there. I managed to catch a bit of it. Of course, I had to go to bed, unfortunately. But so what happened with Zero Counterplay versus the Abjured? That game wasn't on in the end. I'm correct in saying that, right?
Yeah, so what happened with Zero Counterplay and the Abjured is obviously the Abjured was all there as they usually are. Zero Counterplay unfortunately had a slight roster issue on day of. I know for sure that they're going to be back this coming Monday, but for this one of their players wasn't there, so they had an ineligible roster.
That's the one.
That's the one. And so yeah, they weren't able to play actually on the stream. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things where if it was like Final Form versus the Abjured, or maybe like Apex Prime versus Spooky, that kind of thing, that would have been something that would have been really kind of upsetting. But at the end of the day, I think Zero Counterplay versus the Abjured would have played out like that either way. So,
yeah, I remember you saying that actually when I was watching. That was probably the most predicted result and the best that maybe they could have got. It's kind of brutal though, isn't it? When you see that, just talking about scores, and you say 2-0, they don't closely say, the games. Whereas that footage that we just showed you can show you how close some of those games can actually get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas we didn't really get that on EU this past week. There is a theory behind this. Obviously, we had the pre-qualified teams versus the already qualified, the recently qualified teams. Sorry, so there was a bit of that going on. But before I talk about EU, let's just have a look at NA. So we saw Herix obviously explained what happened between Zero Counterplay and the Abjured. So they get 2-0 already. Now, Never Lucky versus Spooky as well. How dominant were those other games there?
Well, Spooky versus Never Lucky started out with a good level of competition. I mean, like Spooky and Never Lucky were going at it a little bit on Forest, but Spooky wound up winning that first map pretty handily towards the end. They started getting the flow a little bit better. Mime, of course, playing the Necromancer as opposed to the Mesmer that they're used to playing with, but they feel really good with that Necromancer. It has a lot of control in the team fights, and they're able to rotate them pretty well. Yeah. But by the time they got over to the Legacy match, I mean, Spooky just dominated Never Lucky. They had the 3-cap going, and they just absolutely just put him in the dirt. I mean, honestly, it was absolutely ridiculous in the Legacy match. I thought Never Lucky, I mean, coming off of some roster issues, though, that's the biggest thing with them. They didn't have Bear. Obviously, they've lost Karina and Physics, and of course, before the Pro League even happened, they lost Amon. So they've been struggling to get back, but I think once they do, they're still going to be a pretty strong team. It's just they have to find their footing. They have to get their bearings right.
They played this week, at least,
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest. Then one of the other teams that has a full roster and didn't even play. So I think that's pretty much a big credit to themselves as well. I think you're right though. It's going to be difficult for them, and maybe this season for them is probably going to be all the storyline behind these guys, I suppose, as you could say, is the fact that maybe They might come quite close to the bottom of the league just because of that, not because of individual skill, but because of team, synergy. But they might be fighting to stay in the league more than anything, which is, will be quite good because, it means that they can get that experience still, but, stay in for next season, hopefully. I don't want to say, write them off like first week in, but that's a difficult thing to come back from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's also people have to realize that the Guild Challenger League, which by the way is starting on December 1st, so just a couple of days away from this point on, or from this point here, next Tuesday actually.
That's right.
That the Challenger League will be open, the PvP ranks will be open as well. So the teams that are not in the Pro League right now, teams that are actually pretty strong in my opinion, teams like on NA, like Radioactive, if they're gonna keep going and playing, that's a team that Never Lucky has to be kind of thinking about if they're not going to be making it, if they can't find where they feel comfortable and actually perform well in this league, and they wind up being one of those bottom teams, they have to be looking at, oh man, we have to go up against Radioactive, who are looking to get back in, and they're angry too. So
wow, okay, they are awesome. That's good to know though. Like, it's good to have that, that fire to get back into Pro League. Let's just quickly go back over to the NA results and just have a look. Team PZ, Apex Prime 2-1, so close stuff between those guys in the end as well. Going to a Kylo, good stuff. Liking it. And
yeah,
then,
Apex PZ was probably the best match, honestly.
The best series.
The cool thing about...
was this our feature match last week?
It was our feature match. People actually thought Apex was going to win. It was pretty close. So
I did
honestly,
too. I did. Wait a minute, who did you say?
I thought...
I think you said Team
PZ, man. I thought it was going to be PZ, and honestly, it should have been, and it was mistakes on their part, in my opinion, that actually led to Apex Prime taking it. And then by the time they got to Kylo, Apex was just feeling it so much that they were just on fire. I mean, they were honestly outplaying PZ at that current point. But the first two maps, honestly, I felt like PZ should have taken them. They should have taken them.
I do wish I'd watched more because I remember catching the first, but I missed that highlight, I guess. But it was some really good games on NA this past week. I did enjoy that. So that might be. Unfortunately, we won't get to see those guys play each other again. Maybe until next season if they're still both here. But that could be something in the future where it could be a good one to just remember and look out for actually. And then we had Final Form versus Easy Peasy Lemon Squeezy. Ostrich Eggs coming back. Love it.
Ostrich Eggs, yeah, he was in Apex, and we had a little interview with him a little bit as well, and he was feeling like he could take on the Absurd, man. He was talking a little smack about how not his
Ostrich
team.
Eggs talking smack.
Yeah, it wasn't even about his team. He was saying that the team is doing well and they've been working their butts off for the past 3 weeks, which is true. They definitely have. They've been scrimming a lot. They've been working on a lot of things. They've been fixing their composition. Of course, moving 2 players over to new professions as opposed to what they were running beforehand. Obviously, Ostrich Eggs moving from NG to Necro. And then you have Trackful going from Scrapper to Revenant. But, I mean, he was saying actually that the team... or the people who are going to beat the Absurd is whatever team he's on. He feels like he is the key to beating the Absurd because he played with them. He went through all the steps of learning how to be that team, the Absurd. So he feels like he can bring another team to do the same thing. But yeah, talking about Final Form versus Easy Peasy, Final Form, bringing that interesting comp. And we were talking about it a little bit beforehand, that double Druid, double Chrono with the Elementalist. And honestly...
That's crazy.
Good luck, man. Good luck. That is a hard comp to take down.
Was it Bunker?
They're all flaws.
What amulets were the Mesmers running on that?
The Mesmers were running Zerker, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow.
If not Marauders, but I'm pretty sure Zerkers. And then the Druids were running Sentinels for sure. So honestly, though, the thing to kind of take away from this is that there are still flaws in it. There are still ways to get around the difficulty of trying to take that comp on, because obviously it's like the same thing as it was with Radioactive and even Apex before, like a year ago, where you have kind of like a bunker style comp where it's very hard to take down certain members of the team, and then you have like a lot of damage rotating in with a little bit of support as well. A lot of peels. That's the major thing that made Radioactive kind of a lot better, is the peels that came in, and then of course the Mesmers have the evade wills and the well heal, and then obviously all those kind of things, gravity well as well, that they can add to that they can get their their cooldowns back. So it's really strong. But the thing that kind of hurt to Apex Prime and Radioactive was the fact that they could get out-rotated. The problem now is, how do you out-rotate 2 Chronomancers? How do you out-rotate 2 different portals. It's very hard for teams to do
Yeah.
that. But in my opinion, the secret comes down to exploiting Bob, the Elementalist for Final Form. If you exploit that, if you can take him out quickly, then I think it will create holes in their in the way that they rotate, as well as whenever you go into the finding the druids, force them into the celestial avatar form, and then get a lot of CCs out on there, because they aren't going to be. I mean, they have stab in their builds, but if you can kind of rip that off and get it off of them, or kind of cause them to not have that in that situation, when they go into celestial avatar form, you can CC and burst, and they're going to be basically useless. So hopefully teams will be able to do that and find. I mean, hopefully there's other strategies too, because if that's it, then that's not a lot of vulnerability points, you know.
No, that's true. Well, it's very, NA always coming out with the very interesting compositions, and we had some similar interesting stuff happening on EU as well. So we go into the results page here. So we saw Car Crash versus Vermilion. Vermilion were very, very confident in those games. Car Crash, actually, compared to their first series in the qualifier last week, it almost felt like almost different teams. They commit to some situations and very awkward rotations where I felt like they almost put themselves in position of a loss. I'm not going to say throwing the game, because that's not something I feel that teams are obviously doing. But there was some really, really interesting rotations here as well. As we go over towards the next match as well, we had TCG versus More Guns N' Roses. They had some real big disconnection problems. Well, not disconnection, but some lag issues on different members of their team, unfortunately. But really, I mean, the way TCG played, they were very dominant. Helseth was playing on that Mesmer Bunker build with the Celestial Amulet. And they just took him to town. I mean, they didn't let him have many points at all between the 2 series, actually. And very, very dominant performance from those guys. So their momentum going in towards the week 2 of our Pro League is insurmountable. And we're going to be able to see a really interesting matchup. We're going to be able to see the preview of the matchups coming up soon. And I'm pretty excited about that in itself. But More Guns N' Roses now, man. I mean, they really need to pick themselves up off that. Okay, maybe they've learnt some stuff from, making sure our connections are solid, making sure that we're able to play on the day. But sometimes, connection issues are just a thing that.
Yeah, and honestly, I think if I remember correctly, this was the team that went through the qualifier that everybody felt was the best team in the qualifier. So it's a little unfortunate that they went up against a team like TCG, but of course going up against all the teams. I mean, it's really hard to find a team that would have been a good matchup for them, because the top 4 teams in EU are just so strong. I mean, Vermilion, Orange Logo, TCG, Rank 55, they're all such strong teams that it's hard to find like a good first matchup. But of course, I mean, they have other times where they can kind of come up and prove themselves, where of course next week they'll have that option for sure.
Definitely. So then we saw Orange Logo. Now, I haven't been able to watch these guys scrim much, and they were versus Chaotic Contingency. And I tip this as possibly, a close. It could have been possible that this was going to be close, just because of what I'd seen from Chaotic Contingency. It was not close. it wasn't really that close. I mean, they played 2 Revenants, and Tage and or Tage, I'm not sure what I'm going to call him now, because he's changed his name almost to what kind of Helseth calls him actually. And Denshi they were owning, man. They were getting the kills. They had Rom was on Druid. Syndranir was playing Engineer, and he is literally. He might not want me to say this, but he's only played roughly 60 games on Engineer. And they literally destroyed Fate. It was ridiculous.
I've played with Syndranir, or Syndranir, actually. You pronounce it wrong, by the way. Syndranir.
Okay. He never tells me that.
So I played with him for a while. I think probably about a year at this point. He's actually, in my opinion, one of the strongest multi-classers in the scene, not just for EU, but also for NA. He's a really, really solid player, of course, a really, really solid thief. Definitely. Easily in the talks for a top 3 thief in the entire world, in my opinion. I mean, easily in that talk for sure. But I mean, people kind of don't expect him to have all these other classes that he's able to pick up very,
never seen
very
him
quickly. Yeah,
I'm sure there's
a lot of people that haven't seen him play that scrapper, play anything else for that matter. But I think he's a really good player on pretty much.
Definitely.
I mean, give him something and give him a week on it, and he's good to go, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And that's the versatility of Orange Logo, right? Because Denshi's pretty much the same as well.
Right, yeah. Absolutely.
Like, always multicasting, you know. We've seen him in WTSs playing different, you know, played Engineer in the first one with Orange Logo, and then in the second one he played Ellie, and I think he played Ellie on TCG as well, as far as I can remember. And, you know, like, that's just perfect. Frostball played, you know, Bunker Mesmer as well. So he was really the support because Ron was running like a Druid build, but with Marksman. So it was like, you know, their builds weren't... There wasn't a massive amount of healing support through. Like, there was a lot of boon outage, and they were just literally... And actually, someone who described it very well was Karam, and he was talking about... And I think Super to me at some point as well was talking about, you know, the domination going into fights, making sure that they win that fight, full aggression. This is what Orange Logo, they've gone right back to it. Full aggression mode. Just completely dominate your opponents in fights around the map. Get the caps that way. And it's almost as simple as that. There's not much... If teams can sustain them in the future, they might have problems, as they have done in the past, in terms of rotating, because they're not really a rotating team. They're rotating off their kills, if that makes sense. And
absolutely.
It's just like... I love watching it because it reminds me a lot of the WTS in Boston and that kind of play style. And yeah, it was really good to watch because it was kind of surprising as well, and especially seeing Sin on an NG. I did see him in the Mist a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Oh, I might play it during week 1. You never know." But anyway, we're going to run into rank 55 Dragons, and they ran away with this series as well, really, versus Purple Noise. I think, you know, like you said as well, the newly qualified teams had a bit of trouble this week, in all honesty, and we can have a look at the future preview matches for week 2. But first of all, we're going to have a look at the NA standings and see how these teams kind of stand up. We kind of can already know just by going through the results that we just had, of course. You know, final form, the Abjured and Spooky joint first at the moment, with Apex Prime over in the 4th position with 5th, taken by PZ. And then we got 6th, 3 positions, of course, because we've got 3 losses there. The 0-2s for Never Lucky, Easy Peasy, Lemon Squeezy, and 0 Counterplay. So we're looking forward to hopefully seeing those guys next week. Have a little bit more luck, I suppose, especially for Never Lucky. So maybe they can be proved.
Yeah, they
right.
are never lucky at the moment with all those roster issues, but hopefully they can change that luck.
It's the name.
Next week, man.
They need to change the name. It's just like awful luck, even with the net luck. I don't really need to explain that, really, to be honest. And then we've got the EU League Leaderboard here as well, with Orange Logo ranked 55 and a TCG there over on 1st. This is all by alphabetical and whatnot over here as well. There's no real first team, and Vermilion as well, because everyone won exactly on the same amount of score. So 5th, joint 5th at the moment, Car Crash, Chaotic, Contingency, More Guns, and also Purple Noise, all looking forward to hopefully coming back in the next week. But here
and actually, just for clarity, I think a lot of people don't realize how this works, and this was actually kind of something that I think people were kind of curious about, is that the standings actually work off of the games played. So how it basically works is, it's not just if you win the series, you get like 1, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you want to win.
You want to win all your games without losing them. So if you look at the people who are looking at the NA side, you could see that the teams that won without losing were all in 1st, and then a team that actually did still win their series was in 4th and was actually in 4th behind them. That's because they didn't have the same points because they have a loss in their record.
That's it, exactly. And yeah, I mean, over in the EU, it's just everyone's the same because it's 2.
Yeah.
It's a bit easier, I suppose. But it makes sense because we can't have draws, you know? We can't have equal.
Absolutely.
We can't get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 7 weeks. Yeah, so it really is important to try and get even a game. Like, this is maybe even something the teams are kind of almost forgetting as well. Like, after the first game, it might be demoralising, but to try and get your win even on your best map is so important for a team at the moment, because it can be the difference even between relegation and playoffs, when they might get demoted and go in towards the Guild Challenger League, or staying in the Pro League, and it really could be that difference. Just one simple game that they could have just, you know, won through a little bit more determination or whatever you want to call that. We are going to go over to the NA1 Week 2 preview and see who's going to be playing each other. So, do you want to run us through these games, Hurix, and just maybe give us a tiny bit of background info?
All right, so first match that you guys are going to be seeing is Zero Counterplay versus Apex Prime. Of course, Apex Prime coming off the high of this past week, winning over PZ with those really great matches. And Zero Counterplay, this will be the first time we actually get to see them play, because this is the first week that they'll actually have their full eligible roster ready to play.
Huzzah!
You know, fingers crossed at least. So it'll be cool to see those guys play. I think, honestly, that Apex Prime, especially with the momentum that they have going into this week, I think that they are feeling really confident about this one. I think Apex Prime is going to be probably taking this, honestly, probably 2-0.
Okay.
And looking at match 2, you have PZ versus the Absurd. PZ, still a really good team despite the fact that they lost to Apex. I still think that they should have taken first 2 maps, and they just kind of let it slip through their fingers. Of course, the Absurd is the first time we'll get to see them in the Pro League because they were up against Zero Counterplay. So.
That's true. I mean, there is something about that, isn't there? That the practice that comes out. Like, all these guys got to play last week, so at least there's that. I mean, obviously, these guys are scrimming to a degree. And so, obviously, they're playing teams in the Pro League or they're playing other people, like collaboration of different people as well. So, you know, it's not that they're not practicing, but they haven't played as many games as these guys in the Pro League. All right, it's one series.
Yeah, absolutely. That's completely fair to say, in my opinion. But of course, the Absurd though is a totally different beast than what most people expect, and totally different experience. And
Dominating
they have
force.
more experience. Yeah.
Be interesting, and also to see what builds they're actually running as well, because you know it's different to play what they're playing in scrims. Because some people are, you know, they're counter comping and they're just changing tiny bits in their traits, which are actually, you know, very, very important and to be noted. Just simple things, especially elementalists, changing quite a lot up depending on who they're going up against.
And I think, honestly, PZ will do okay on Forest. I think they're going to probably score 300 points on Forest, although I think it's not going to be too much more than that. And then after that, Legacy is just going to be for the Absurd, unless PZ can come up with a really good way to exploit the map, because, I mean, obviously the map is extremely open, and Absurd has been known to kind of fall behind because of that, although now they're running 2 Revenants, so it's a lot easier to not be exploited by that because of the mobility of the Revenant. It's very easy to get the rotations and stay alive in those team fights. But at the next match, and this is honestly, in my opinion, going to be the most... if I had to pick a feature match, it would be this one, because Never Lucky versus Easy Peasy is going to be good, but Final Form versus Spooky matters more, in my opinion. And that's because these guys are both tied for first, and these guys are both teams that I imagine that will end it in the top 4. So this could very well determine who gets second and who goes to the finals.
Yeah. That is a big game in standings. You're right.
Yeah, so Spooky has to figure out a way to utilize their 2 Necromancers to both CC, provide sustained pressure, and also set up burst for their other guys to actually take down the Druids in these fights, and even take down some of these Chronomancers as well, because that composition from Final Form, like we said before, is like absolutely insane. They have to find ways to take it out.
Perfect, you know, going up against Mesmus with Condi. Like, if you've got Condi going up against Mesmus, that's perfect.
The problem is actually hitting them, though.
Yeah,
it's because
that's true.
they have 2 Evade Wells, they have the Gravity Well. Obviously, Necromancer struggles in the Gravity Well because you have the Flesh Worm, and outside of that, you don't have a way to break out of it, so they're going to have to save it, the Flesh Worm, not to get out, but honestly for the Gravity Well, because if they get out and they come back into the fight, Gravity Well goes down, they might maybe luck out and get out of that one, but then another Gravity Well comes down. So and then you have then you have Continuum Shift, so they can put another one down. There's so many different ways. Yeah, it's really difficult.
That could be really, that could be a really interesting series, actually. Not to say that the others, but you're right, you know, there's so many different counters to each other, and wait and see.
One thing, honestly, that I would like to see from this, actually, is Spooky using Sunfish. I know he's played a lot of the Necromancer, but I would really like to see him on Dragon Hunter, because you can pull people out of the Evade Wells, you can pull people out of the Invul, and you can pull people like all the way out of everything and set up kills in that regard with the Dragon Hunter, and then you have the on-point pressure as well. I would really like to see him go back to his main of Guardian and let Mime take the role of Necromancer. to provide that kind of sustained pressure and condition
Maybe
control.
they will. Maybe they will. That would be good. Yeah, it would be good actually versus that comp. You're right. You're right. So what's the match 4 like as well then?
Match 4, so Never Lucky versus Easy Peasy. Of course, Never Lucky going to be the team that lost 0-2 to Spooky just this past week. They were one of the pre-qualifying teams. They didn't have Bear there, which is, in my opinion, one of their stronger players, and they're coming off of some roster instability, picking up new guys. I know Feav is going to be with them, so they're going to have to kind of like practice a lot. I think I've been talking to them a little bit. They're talking about going 7 days a week, trying to get back into it, try to catch up to everybody else. So if they can do that, I think they'll perform very well. But Easy Peasy is one of those teams that is still trying to kind of prove themselves as well. And you have players like Zor and Kaden who are honestly pretty strong players. But this is another one that's going to be pretty close. I just don't think it's as big of a deal as Final Form versus Spooky because of where they stand right now in the leaderboard. Yeah,
makes complete sense. So hopefully this week they might be a little bit more lucky with their goings on. But yeah, that could be could be quite a nice one to watch. There's some really nice matchups there, and hopefully we'll see some potential upsets. I want to see a game against the Abjured Taken, that's for sure. So before we go, we will be going through the Pro League Week 2 very quickly. Orange Logo versus Vermilion. Now this is going to be a great one because these guys used to scrim a lot before the last WTS, and that's probably an understatement actually. Some very veteran players coming out. Orange Logo probably going into that as the favourites between themselves and Vermilion. We might see some possible switch-ups in Vermilion as well because we've got Loft Condi coming out from Orange Logo as well. There's a lot of pressure, and hopefully, we might see Vermilion take something away from that. Maybe even a game, possibly, in my opinion, is something very likely with More Guns Than Roses versus Purple Noise. I would say probably favourites at the moment would be on More Guns Than Roses, looking to come back after last week's defeat and unfortunate connection issues to potentially bring something up against Purple Noise. We saw some really, in terms of their communication, there was some debatable movements around the map and some potential plays as well. First week, still very new compositions for these guys, and actually like getting together. More Guns Than Roses. Sven was telling me that who plays Guns and Tools. That's right. That the team has only been together for like 2.5 weeks leading up to the first week of Pro League. And it's a very similar situation for Purple Noise. Their final lineup wasn't that long before the first week of Pro League of the qualifiers. So everyone's in quite a similar situation in this. So this could be actually quite close in the end, dependent on that maybe. But I feel like More Guns N' Roses probably should take that series. Then we got rank. This is the big one. This is the big one of this week. Rank 55 Dragons versus TCG is going to be a massive series. Of course, TCG going to WTS now twice out of the 3 times that we've had it. Rank 55 Dragons lost out, unfortunately. But these 2 of our teams are already pre-qualified. And Helsef is going up against ex-members of the Civilized Gentlemen, of course. There's actually probably been more ex-members of TCG than there have been full-time members, in all honesty, but, that's the thing. Of course, Zan and Lipion as well, and Livin, they've all been playing together and played with Helsef at different points in time as well from WTS, so that's going to be really interesting to see that kind of... I'm pretty sure there's no bad blood, but it's a nice grudge match to watch, It's a nice storyline behind that series. And they're very, very quality players on both sides. Still TCG, they've got a very young squad, man. It's a very young squad. 17 and 18-year-olds. And I'm not saying that's just maybe young compared to me, but, it's the same on a lot of these teams.
Well, you are kind of a grandpa.
I am getting
honestly.
A little bit long in the tooth.
40?
40. I'm 34 on the 6th of December.
Oh man.
Yeah, I know. So if I don't get a birthday card, I will be very upset.
I got you, man. It'll be Sunday. I'll get it to you when you're mid-flight, dude. Mid-flight.
Thanks.
Actually,
man.
You don't fly on Sundays. You fly on Mondays. So
No. I don't even fly. I drive.
Oh. I'll give it to you on my flight. when you're sitting at home doing nothing.
Sick, man. Awesome. Send me a message. So that series is going to be really, really good to watch. So that's probably my featured favourite series of. It's actually they're all good. This is a really good week. Actually, week 2 for both regions. It's going to be great. It's going to be great every week, but this feels like it's going to be quite a strong lineup. Going over to the final match, match 4, Car Crash versus Chaotic Contingency. Chaotic Contingency are looking to come back from potentially maybe a series last week which felt as if they could have done better, which they hadn't been up against Orange Logo many times as far as I know, scrimmage-wise. And I feel like they were quite surprised with what happened in that series, in all honesty. I think I was as well. So they're looking back to come and, take something against Car Crash. Same with those guys, an unexpected potential that they got quite dominated last week maybe as well. And so both of these teams want to come into Pro League this week for EU and show us what they have got. That's pretty much the Pro League for this week, to be honest. We've given you the results, we've given you the standings and the preview for next week's matches. This has been a, it's a recorded version, so we haven't gone through the straw polls. Normally we go through straw polls. We're going to have interviews in future as well. So just to give you guys a little bit of information about the future of this show, you're going to see me and Hurix especially for the next 6 weeks at the very least. So you better
Hopefully
get used to it.
you can get used to this a little bit.
Used to this combo as well.
Yeah, man.
It's a new thing. We're still getting used to it. We're confused. We're upset. We're happy. Many different emotions going through.
Dude.
But yeah, otherwise, I'm excited for next week. How are you feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of great matches. We talked about Final Form versus Spooky, Never Lucky versus Easy Peasy are certainly going to be good ones. On the other side of EU, you have Orange Logo versus Vermilion. You have Rank 55 versus TCG. Honestly, I think all of the games on EU side are going to be pretty competitive.
Oh, yeah.
While there are 2 on NA that are really, really, really going to be great. And honestly, all of them kind of have the possibility of being good games.
Definitely, man. So, everyone in chat as well, just a reminder, 1st of December will be the Guild Challenger League. You want to make sure you are in your guild team, so make sure you're assigning players to that guild team roster. You need a minimum of 3 players so that you can enter into that league. Of course, when you get into the point of going into Pro League, you'll have a roster as well, but you want to make sure you're probably having 5 will determine whether or not you're going to win or lose quite heavily, especially if you're going up against another 5 from a guild team. But you want to make sure that you get all the information you can, get into that team roster, check out the guild panel and make sure you're well attuned to that, I suppose. But there'll be more information, I'm sure, through the blog post on guildwars2.com. Don't forget to follow myself at JebDan on Twitter, as well as Hurix at CTHurix, because we give you a lot of information, especially on the day, behind the scenes screenshots and stuff like that, which is always fun, as well as giveaways and
Pranking some Miley Cyrus and Taylor Swift at the ESL Studios. That's what we're doing over in NA, man.
Afterwards, we have pizza and stuff, man. It's in front of a big TV.
That's a given, man. It's honestly, lovely. I think the more exciting thing is the Taylor Swift versus Miley Cyrus debate, and that's really what kind of sets NA at a higher standard than EU, in my opinion.
And on that note, I think we're definitely going to have to end the show. But
yeah, probably.
Anything else? Anything else you want to say before we go, mate?
Nothing from me, man. Nothing from me.
Awesome. But other than that, from me and Hurix, thank you for joining us for On Point for today. We'll see you in the mists, and we'll also see you on Monday for Pro League Week 2, as well as On Point at an hour later than it's been today. Okay, happy Thanksgiving as well. Sorry, forgot about that. Thanksgiving today, of course, in America. Yesterday. It would have been Thursday. Yeah. Sorry, my bad. Okay, so happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you very soon. Take care.